Welcome to the Nobody Listens podcast. I'm Maddie.
And I'm Ruven.
Today we're not talking about a movie. We are talking about an album this time. And we are going to be doing this episode on the self-titled album by the Beatles, more commonly known as the White Album.
It was released in late 68 and it's over 90 minutes long, which is why it was released on 2 LPs instead of just one. And I'm not sure if that was a good decision, because it could be argued that a lot of what's on this album isn't really good. Don't get me wrong, it's a great album. It's one of the great albums of the 60s and maybe of all time.
But you could say that, okay, it was a great album, but they kind of just spammed it with everything they'd done.
They basically had no filter at all, and they just put everything into there. I think that is one of the reasons why...
In no particular order, as I'll go on to later.
Yeah, you mentioned that when we are planning this. Can you go into why you think there was no order to the songs before we actually talk about the songs, or will you get into that later?
I could get into that, but really, Glass Onion followed by Obladi Oblada and then Piggies after Blackbird. Really? Really?
Yeah, we're going to get into that later when we actually talk about the songs. I take it you also think we should go song by song.
We could.
Before we start discussing the first track, I want to mention that the album doesn't really have a cover. It's only white with the name of the band imprinted into it. And if you got one of the earlier copies, which I actually do, you've also have a number printed on it. I think that the White Album, the White Album cover is because how would you put a cover onto this album?
Okay, I know for obvious reasons that's not how it would have worked at the time. But let's say that album cover had been made today.
Yeah.
In that context, in the best possible way, it looks like someone wrote the Beatles in a default font on Microsoft Word.
Yeah.
Printed it out and photocopied that with the paper in an awkward at an awkward angle in the photocopier.
But have you ever held a physical copy of it? It doesn't
LP
even have
version.
to be the LP. The CD too. The CD has...
It looks amazing on the CD.
Has it like printed on, like imprinted? What do you call it? When you... with a stamp into paper.
Imprinted, stamped.
Stamped. But yeah, but stamped sounds like using ink. It wasn't with ink. It was just like... through there.
Engraved?
Engraved, thank you. It was engraved. That looks a bit better than just printed on, because it looks kind of cheap when it's just printed on there in a dark grayish font. But honestly, a clusterfuck like this album, what would an album cover be?
I don't know. To make it work, they'd either have to go full on acid trip or make it as minimalistic as possible, and I'm guessing they went for the latter approach.
I mean, the full on acid trip thing, which they did on the covers.
Every other.
Which they did on a few covers, for example, Sgt. Pepper's, wouldn't really work with a lot of the material on this album, because there is
Revolution 9.
There is a lot more downplayed stuff on this album as well. It's not all psychedelic, all guns blazing shit. Some of it is also like Blackbird, which we will talk about later. Anyway, do you want to get into the tracks?
Should we do it track by track, or should we just go straight in?
We should go... I think we should go track by track. Some tracks will be discussed in length. Some we will just say, alright, it sucks, let's move on. We won't say that of the first track, I think.
Obviously not.
Back in the USSR, which is a bit of a pastiche of what the Beach Boys were doing a few years earlier. I don't have much to say about that other than this is a fun track.
Well, it is.
It has a cute little reference to another song, which I think is by Ray Charles, called Georgia on My Mind. Of course, when Ray Charles sung it, Georgia was the state of the US. And when the Beatles sing back in the USSR, Georgia's always on my mind, they mean Georgia, the Asian country. It's in Asia, right? Or is that still Europe?
I'm not entirely sure. I know where it is roughly geographically, but in terms of the territory, I'm not entirely sure.
This Georgia being two different places, it's not a problem in Germany, because in Germany, in German, we actually call those places different names. We call the Georgias that the Beatles mean Georgien, and we call the American state Georgia. So there is a difference.
In this case, I'd say it is a reference to the country, yes.
Yeah, it's a reference to the country, but it's also meant as a play on Georgia on My Mind by Ray Charles, which is about the state.
And how political do you think this song is?
I am not really
Do you
sure.
do you think it has any kind of message, or that the politics are just kind of put in there as a fun reference?
I really can't think of any reference to the politics of the USSR in the song at all. It's mostly about the country and the women, and not really about the politicians. There is no reference to anything that country has done. Even though, the Beatles are from England and the USSR was not in open war with them, but they weren't friends, let's put it that way.
And then there's the bit about Ukraine girls leaving the West behind, and then Moscow girls and Georgia and all that. Thinking, is there a slight reference to relations between countries?
I always just read that as the Ukraine girls are much better ladies than the girls in the West. I didn't think
it could be interpreted. It's a difficult one.
So the second track is Dear Prudence.
It is indeed.
I have a point about something else than the lyrics this time.
Okay.
I have a point about the drumming. Oh, I also have another point about the drumming back in the USSR. Because sometimes on this album, people who aren't Ringo Starr are on drums. Back in the USSR, Ringo Starr wasn't in the studio at all.
No.
And you can tell, because this is clearly not his style.
It works though.
It works.
It really fucking works for the song.
And this is what I was trying to say, what I was gonna say about Dear Prudence, is that I hear people complaining about the drumming on this song, because it's a bit lazy and a bit simple, but it really fits the song.
Yes, it's a bit lazy and it's a bit simple, but think about, I know that point wasn't about the lyrics, but now think about the lyrics in relation to that. I mean, there's a pretty simple, kind of innocent seeming theme to it.
And I think if somebody just went harder or more complicated with the drums, it would have ruined the atmosphere of the song. Because instrumentation in general is used very, very sparingly in this song. And it's mostly just the lyrics and the singing. And it's basically a cute little song trying to get some girl named Prudence.
Yeah,
basically to get over her depression or something, I think. It's about telling someone to open up.
Written about a girl in that day and age. It's not pervy, it's not even sexual.
Yeah, and it's not even about love. It's about, this could be anyone.
It seems completely platonic.
Yeah, it is. It's about a friend. It's not about a love interest. Which is nice to see that the Beatles, who are mostly known for love songs, do something with a woman which isn't about wanting to get into her pants.
That's what I'm saying. It's nice to see a song that's written about a woman that's not either about a relationship with her or objectifying her.
Moving on to the third track, Glass Onion. And
that is a good song to trip out to.
I wouldn't know, but isn't it a bit too You know Punchy to Trip Out to?
No, actually.
This song
I,
references a lot of the older Beatles material.
wait, where do you think the lyrics came from?
I think they came from them re-listening to their other albums.
And putting it all together again.
Yeah, and kind of having a continuity type
Create
thing.
creating a new image with loads of their old stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I like is that when they sing about The Fool on the Hill, which is another song they did the same year or the year before, which had a recorder solo in it. And when he mentions The Fool on the Hill in the song, you hear some recorder being played in the background. And it really fits, even though you wouldn't think this type of song would be enhanced by adding a recorder. It kind of works.
I love the matter-of-fact statement about who the walrus was.
Yeah, even though in the song I Am the Walrus, John Lennon claimed to be the walrus, and now in
Now it's
Glass
saying
Onion,
it's actually Paul.
it's actually Paul. It has a reference to the two of them always working together writing the songs.
Mm-hmm.
Because all the songs, even if only one of them wrote them, they are all attributed to Lennon/McCartney. So are they
So they're
making
kind of both the walrus in a sense.
Are they making a statement about that? About not being
Are you high?
different? No, I'm not.
That's a very good point, but I never made that connection.
You are the stoner here, not me.
Apparently he doesn't smoke pot.
I never did.
You guys be the judge.
The fourth song on the album, Opla Di, Opla Da.
I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Lyrically, it's kind of clever, but
how
the song itself, the tune. Okay, this song makes me cringe.
How is it clever?
I don't even know. It's not about someone they know, is it?
Not really. I mean, the name Desmond in this song is a reference to the ska musician Desmond Dekker.
Yeah.
Whose style they are ripping off with this. But I don't think it's based on anything more than his name, really.
I'm not sure if it is a ska song.
It is. It really clearly is. Compared to, I can't pronounce this, the Desmond Dekker song. You know which one I'm talking about, right?
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, how do you pronounce that? Israelites? Israelites? Yeah, but it's basically inspired by that. And that is very clearly an early ska song, so this would be too. Don't you think?
Still, I'm not quite sure if they knew what they were doing with this.
They weren't. But you were saying something about the lyrics being clever. And I can't see where you are coming from.
Yeah, no, forget that. I thought I saw a reference to something, but no.
Should we even discuss the fifth song, or should we just move on to the sixth and not even mention Wild Honey Pie? Not Honey Pie, we will get into Honey Pie later.
The lyrical genius of Honey Pie. Also the same lyrical genius that they applied to Why Don't We Do It in the Road? Which is a great song from a musical perspective, but come on, man.
There are two songs on this album, one of which we both like and one of which we apparently both don't, which only have very, very few lyrics. The first one is this one, Wild Honey Pie. The only lyric of it is honey pie and nothing else. And then later on there is a blues song recorded by only Paul McCartney, which is called Why Don't We Do It on the Road?
In the road,
sorry. And the only lyrics to it are, why don't we do it in the road? Nobody will be watching us.
It is a great song.
It is. And apparently he recorded that by himself overnight. And then John Lennon got pissed off that he wasn't part of that but wanted to be.
Right. Is anyone gonna mention the Captain Marvel thing in Bungalow Bill?
By that you mean that Bungalow Bill is a very, very Stan Lee type of name, like Peter Parker or Bruce Banner. They even still do that with the new
Yes.
Miss Marvel being named Kamala Khan. Yeah. Until you pointed that out to me earlier today on WhatsApp, I never thought about that because honestly, I don't really care for this song, so I haven't given this much of a thought before.
I'm not actually sure who Bungalow Bill is. I'm not very well versed on the backstory of this particular song.
Me neither, because I don't,
But
as I said, I don't care
it
for.
mentions him hunting tigers and elephants. Now, a bungalow is a colonial term for a type of house from when the Brits colonized India. And they often did go hunting tigers and elephants.
Apparently,
Anything to do with that?
yeah, Wikipedia says that this song mocks the actions of a young
But he's
American named
somehow.
Richard A. Cook III, known as Rick. We are gonna get into the Indian stuff now, aren't we?
I'm confused because it's talking about a similar kind of trope, but the tigers and elephants and bungalows suggests a different setting than him being American.
Yeah, he's a young American, as I said, but they met him when they were visiting this yogi in India.
Ah, that
And
makes
this
sense.
song is poking fun at him. I really don't have much to say about the whole Indian stuff because I'm really not well versed in any of this. But apparently, before they recorded this album, they spent some time in India with some guru. And what happened was they went there to learn about Indian culture and meditation and stuff like that. But then this guru got pervy with the girls who were visiting as well. And they in deep disappointment, got back off to England to record this album.
That kind of thing still happens today with so-called gurus and the like, particularly white ones who have adopted fake Indian names and customs and are still trying to sell books and yoga retreats and whatnot, but I am not going to open that can of worms just yet.
Alright, while we are talking about him, anyway, the song Sexy Sadie is about him. And Sexy Sadie is meant to be Yogi. While my guitar gently weeps, I think we can agree that that's a great song.
I think we can.
Do you know who played the guitar solo in that? It's by Eric Clapton. You didn't know
I was
that?
going to guess that.
Yeah, it's Eric Clapton, who was a good friend of George Harrison. And George Harrison actually wrote the song in Eric Clapton's house.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, they invited him over to play the solo on the song. Which
It's a good one. It seems like a song that should be depressing, but it kind of isn't.
And I'm reminded about that a lot when I come into my flat. Because this song contains the line, I look at the floor and I see it needs sweeping. While we are mentioning the friendship between Eric Clapton and George Harrison, you know that's the song Layla, which Clapton wrote around the time this was recorded, or a bit later.
I do.
It's about the woman who later married George Harrison, because they both had an interest in the same woman, and so Layla is about that, even though her name wasn't
It's about
Layla.
her.
Yeah, but it's
Well,
about
no,
her.
they changed the name, but
Which is the same thing which also happened to Sexy Sadie on this album. I think that's a good thing to do, to not name names in records. Not only to save the ones who the song is about from the embarrassment, but also so the song becomes a bit more universal, while still having the punch of a personal song.
as for the next one,
Happiness is a warm gun.
Happiness is a Warm Gun, which is actually, from musical perspective, one of my favorite tracks on the album.
Yes, same.
One thing I'm gonna bring up that cracked me up at the end of the first verse, a soap impression of his wife, which he ate and donated to the National Trust. That is the most British thing ever.
What is the National Trust?
You came here. Have you ever been to a National Trust area, like a park or attraction or anything?
And not that I know of.
Well, it's where they have old monuments and castles and stuff, or just hills, forests and green areas, and there's a little bit that they have as an attraction and as National Trust grounds, and you have these all over the country. We mostly have the National Trust because if it hadn't been for those bits of land being protected, there'd be nothing green left in the country.
So it's basically saving some of the nature from the Industrial Revolution back in the day, or what?
I'm not sure if it dates back that far. I'm not entirely certain, but I know a lot of forests and hills and parks and things have been designated national trust areas, and they have cafes, bogs, public facilities, and everything.
All right. So the National Trust is a bit newer than the Industrial Revolution. It was formed in 1895.
Yeah.
That happens a lot with Beatles songs, that there are just very, very British things in there.
Here's the funny part, though. If he ate the
Yeah.
soap impression and then donated it to the National Trust, I can only assume that's a euphemism for shitting in the woods.
It is. I got that he was donating shit, but because I didn't know what the National Trust was, I never thought that was.
I've just got this image of him taking a shit on the ground and all these soap bubbles coming out. You're welcome, everyone.
Also, the first line of this song is "She's not a girl who misses much." Is that about missing something as not having something, or missing something as in guns? You know, shooting. Because missing can mean.
Do you think it's a pun?
Yeah, it is. And there is also not a pun, but a play on words. You know the part of the songs which goes over and over again, Mother Superior, jump the gun?
Yep.
What is a Mother Superior?
A high up nun.
What does that rhyme with? It's a nun jumping the gun. I know, right? I completely broke Maddie right now, by the way. She isn't talking at all. And she's just making a very, very, very stunned face. Alright, you're back. Moving on to Martha, My Dear, or not?
Yeah.
So, about the next track, Martha, My Dear, do you know what that is about?
I do. That song always made me laugh.
Because before I know what it was about, I always thought that sounded really, really condescending. But
It does. I was just about to say, I think it sounds like a break time supervisor telling off a year 3 kid.
But it's about a dog.
Which is I know. I mean, the first time I heard it, I didn't know what it was about. I just assumed it was about a person.
Yeah, because it really doesn't indicate that it's about a dog.
No.
But if you actually know the context, it's a very, very sweet song.
It's really cute.
Also, have you seen that dog?
I don't know what she looked like.
That is Paul McCartney's Big as Sheepdog, which appeared in a lot of pictures with him.
That one?
Yeah, that one.
That's her.
Yeah, that's her.
No, it is a really cute song when you understand that it's not about a woman or anything.
But it was the late 60s, so you wouldn't be sure if you didn't read up on it, whether it was about a woman or not. Because sometimes the picture that the Beatles seem to have of women is a bit pre-modern, let's say.
Yeah. It's
I don't
a bit.
think there's much of that on this album, actually, but
Not
since we
really.
have you,
There's only one song which is clearly about women in that sense.
which one?
The first one.
Oh, yeah.
And even that's kind of shrouded in metaphor. You think, is it political? Is it about the war? Is it about girls? What is it about?
Even though there isn't much of that on this album, I'm pretty sure we will get into this a lot because we have you on the podcast.
Anyway, next track.
Yeah, sleeping problems. I'm so tired. Something I can relate to a lot because I also have sleeping problems.
I
And
totally
that
didn't
song,
go to sleep at 4:30 in the morning the last 3 days.
so this song speaks to both of us.
It does.
And
I love
the,
the fact that they put the term stupid git in there.
that is what I'm talking about with the very British stuff that the Beatles put into their albums all the time. That is just one of the most British insults, isn't it?
You stupid git. It is. I've never heard anyone else say it. It's not even used that much anymore, but it's still a great word.
I also just love the image of of Paul McCartney cursing out John Lennon in the middle of the night for calling him up. Because that is basically what the refrain of the song is. This song is about John Lennon not wanting to call up Paul McCartney because of his sleeping problems, because he knows that he will get cursed out for that. You don't hear songs like that very often.
That's kind of relatable though. When you
It
can't
is.
sleep, so someone might as well call you. But someone better be fucking dead to call you on the phone, on the fucking landline.
I mean, there was really no other option.
There was no other option.
This is
That's
the late
true.
60s.
But the landline then and the landline now has the same problem. You have to get up, pick it up, and stay there.
I mean, not really anymore because there is no cable on many landline phones anymore.
Well, back in the day,
Yeah, but back in the day, it was. It had a fucking cable.
your landline doesn't have a cable.
I don't have the landline, but
You don't even own a landline.
I don't even own a landline. But my mother still uses the landline a lot, and her landline doesn't have a cable, which is why
Mine
she
does, but I
often
don't
doesn't
touch
pick
it.
up because she doesn't know where the landline phone is. Should we move on to Blackbird?
We should.
It's such a beautiful song.
I almost think it's wasted on this album.
How so?
I'm not saying this is not a good album, but as I said, this is basically them spamming a record with everything they've done in no particular order. This is one of the more badly placed songs.
How so?
Dude, they put it before Piggies.
Yeah, but I just love
That's
that
self-explanatory.
you've got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 songs in order which I absolutely adore. From While My Guitar Gently Weeps to Blackbird, everything is awesome.
This is an amazing song. It's kind of almost lost in such a long album with this album doesn't really have a sound to it, does it? Because
No, it doesn't. It's just
it wasn't well curated or anything.
it's basically what it reminds me of is finding a box of shit a deceased loved one owned, where they just crammed everything in, and there is some stuff in there which you keep, and some which you just think, why the fuck have they kept this? And so I think if you like the other stuff the Beatles have done, you will find a lot of stuff to like in this album, but some things where you just think, what were they thinking? Why is this on the album?
But I do love this one.
It's very simple but very beautiful.
Mm.
It was originally meant to be called Black Girl. I'm so glad they dumped the original title and kept it more
Yeah, they didn't make
abstract.
any stupid decisions with that.
It's a bit more abstract. It's about, you know,
And then they
the
added in the bird metaphor to.
yeah. It's about the what do you call that? What the black people in America did in the late 60s, the civil rights movement. I couldn't come up with the English term right now. Bürgerrechtsbewegung.
Should I add a white people joke in here?
What kind of joke would you put in here?
A joke about you being really white.
You could. Is there a joke?
No, it's just funny how that's really fucking self-evident.
You were talking about the next song, Piggies, which is one of the few songs written by George Harrison for the Beatles, which I don't really care for.
Really?
No.
Okay, it was badly placed, as I said, on this one, but it's kind of an upbeat psychedelic meters murder.
Yeah, I don't really get it. It's about pigs eating each other, and it's weirdly upbeat, and
I can't
just-
listen to this without laughing. I love this song.
I just can't. There is nothing. This song just doesn't do anything for me.
Maybe it's just the morbid humor that I like.
Probably.
I could be grasping at straws, but by the second verse, I'm going to assume the pigs are a metaphor for humans and it's about class divides.
It probably is.
The starched white shirts and stuff.
This is probably why it was placed where it was placed. Songs about animals which are really about social movements of the late 60s.
I think you might have a point there. About in terms of the lyrics and the message, they're very well placed. Ironically, in terms of the musical style, that could possibly be the worst placement.
It probably is. What do you think about Rocky Raccoon, which is next on the album?
I like this one. You get it right.
I don't know what there is
Is
to
this
get.
is this a piss take of Americans?
It is. It's a piss take on American music at least, and American
And that
country
kind of
music
all American
specifically.
culture.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not a very deep parody, but
It's a decent parody. It's kind of a rant turned into a song.
basically. I
For
think it
some
works
reason-
better as parody than as actual music.
When I hear this song, all I can think of is that arsehole raccoon from Marvel.
You mean from The Guardians?
Yes.
Ah,
That was Rocket, not Rocky, but that's all I can ever think of.
I never made that connection. Rocket Raccoon is named after the song, right?
I can only assume so.
Next we have
If not-
another.
That's an amazing coincidence, but a wasted opportunity.
After that we have another country-ish song. This one the first song that Ringo ever wrote for the Beatles. And it's by far the worst song that Ringo ever wrote for the Beatles.
Yes.
Holy shit, this song.
Yes.
This might
Is
be...
it just me, or is it almost as though someone slapped down a sum of money in front of Ringo and said, "Here, write me the lyrical equivalent of write a love song and make it the lyrical equivalent of a stock image."
Even though this is a very, very American sounding song, what it reminds me most of is bad German pop music from back in the day, including his voice on this song. I don't know. Ringo is the worst singer of the Beatles, but he usually sounds decent. What the fuck is he trying to accomplish here? Why does he sound so old? He was in his 20s.
The only way this could have been made more of a cliched love song is to throw in the word baby about 16 times.
But after that, we have two great songs, both under 2 minutes. One we already talked about, which is Why Don't We Do It in the Road?
Wait a minute. Before we get onto that,
Yeah.
we need to talk about the car crash bit.
The car crash bit? You mean the Paul is dead thing, or what?
I'm sorry that I doubted you. I was so unfair. You were in a car crash and you lost your hair.
That is one of the things which some conspiracy theorists think is about Paul McCartney dying in a car crash and being replaced by a double.
Some say that, but it's the kind of thing that it's about something. Let's say he was talking about an actual person. It's something that's really deep, but the way he writes it, it can't not be funny.
I don't know what that
You
song
know,
even was.
I think he was aiming to be serious there, but it just came off as trivializing and a bit tongue in cheek.
I hope that it isn't about a specific person.
Because that comes off as the most insensitive thing ever. But it's funny as fuck.
Should we say more about why don't we do it in the road?
Why don't we do it in the road?
That is a good question. We should do it in the road. What is
Yeah, let's
it
do
in
it in
this
the road.
context?
What do you think it is?
I think most people
I
assume
think they're
it's about
talking
sex.
about pulling over and fucking.
It's not actually. It's apparently about spitting on the road, as in bubblegum or chewing tobacco, which was banned. And Paul McCartney asked, why don't we do it in the road? But I think he knew that it could be mistaken to be about fucking.
So I'm guessing he said, "Why don't we?" He was chewing something. He said, "Why don't we do it in the road?" And somebody said the equivalent of the time of "That's what she said,"
yeah.
and it became a song.
Another I can't English today. Another short song. I will. Nothing much to say about this on my end other than it's adorable.
It is. This one actually is a love song, but it's still kind of innocent.
Yeah, because it's not really a love song, it's more of an, well, crush song, I'd say.
I'd say maybe it's somewhere between the two. Because if it's a crush, that's one hell of an extreme crush.
To me, it sounds a bit
Or
like...
am I really just a very unaffectionate person?
No, lyrically, it reminds me of the Police, who often wrote songs about, people who are a bit unhealthy with their emotions. Or in some cases, very unhealthy with their emotions.
Does their name have anything to do with that, though?
I think it does.
Them being called the Police.
Yeah, and they're...
Because some of the points of views they write from have an almost psychopathic mental makeup.
A lot of them do.
I don't think this was the intention with I Will, though.
No, but it kind of sounds like it.
I can see how.
The next song, which I find boring, I know that it's a very personal song to John Lennon, who wrote and sung it, Julia, about his mother. But the end product, to me, is just kind of boring.
It's not a bad song. It's kind of... I guess it's kind of cheesy.
Kinda.
Was that an understatement?
Yeah, it really was.
I wouldn't go as far as to say that it makes you cringe.
It does. It makes me cringe, at least.
The only reason it doesn't make me cringe is because it's about his mum.
Talking about the relatives of the Beatles, the next song, which is the first song on the second LP or second CD, Birthday, it's about two sons of two different Beatles, I can't remember which ones, having the birthday on the same day.
Seriously?
Yes, that is the background of this song.
Did they just figure that out whilst really fucking high and write this?
Apparently so. I think that is true for a lot of the songs that the Beatles did in the second half of their career.
This is something I would scribble down whilst high as fuck.
Talking about the Beatles being high, do you know who sold the Beatles their first pot or gave the Beatles their first pot? Bob Dylan. Because
when was this?
In 64, 65? When they first met and he couldn't believe they had never smoked pot and gave them some.
That lyric though, I would like you to dance. I mean, imagine someone saying that to you. Not even I would like to dance with you. I would like you to dance.
Well, it's written from the perspective of two children. So I think it might be supposed to be a bit awkward. How do you pronounce the next song?
Your blues?
Your blues? Is that your blues as in it's your boy or what?
Pretty much.
Oh, alright. I have nothing to say about this song.
There's a reference in there.
About what?
Dylan's Mr. Jones.
But that is all you have to say?
Pretty much. It's kind of like, it sounds like a very repetitive suicidal song, but it's kind of just the whole thing of a love song based around the only reason I haven't killed myself is you.
I think it's one of the things the album could have done without. And it takes up 4 minutes.
It had potential. This song had potential musically, but it came off kind of boring. Next one.
Yes, Mother Nature's Son. I'm not sure what it's about lyrically, but it's a beautiful song.
I don't know, I imagine it's about some hippie kid.
Yeah, it sounds very of its time again.
Yeah, that's what I mean. As you said, it's simple. It fits its time. It's a great song, but there's not much I can say about it from a socio-political perspective.
It was apparently also written in India, so yeah, it's about this being one with nature. You know, hippie shit.
Yep.
Everybody's got something to hide except for me and my monkey, which was covered by a band called Beatles as Everybody's Got Something to Write Except for Me and My Lightning. If you don't know Beatles, please check them out. They are not great, but they are funny. This is the only point I had to make about this song.
They're kind of a tribute band to two different bands, but also a parody of both of them.
Just check them out, they are great.
Yep. Other than that, this is just a bunch of come-ons, a bunch of noises, and some stoner thoughts.
Your inside is out while your outside is in. That is like so deep, John. You should really write
your
that
inside
down.
is out and your outside is in.
Take it easy.
That's very death metal before that was even a thing.
Speaking of which, we already have discussed Sexy Sadie, and you did the thing that Tara always does for Nash. Let's talk about Helter Skelter. Which is a song about a roller coaster, but it could be argued that it was one of the first heavy metal songs. Before heavy metal was even a thing, because I think this was recorded before Black Sabbath founded, who are supposed to be the first metal band.
Well, this definitely influenced them.
It did. Well, you know, this is the most popular British album of that year, and Black Sabbath are a British band, so...
This is also one of my favorite songs on the album.
I think it drags a little.
You think?
Yeah.
Maybe it's longer than it needs to be, but it's not boring.
It isn't. It isn't boring, but it's...
The riffs are good. It's fun to listen to.
There is an elephant in the room we have to address. It's just a fun, hard, rocking song about riding a roller coaster.
But...
Yeah, Charles Manson thought there were some messages in there which told him to kill the family of Roman Polanski. This is not the only song on this album that did that, but he scribbled the words Helter Skelter with the blood of somebody on the wall when he killed the family of Roman Polanski. Which is a really shitty thing, that art can inspire people to do such horrific acts. Even if there's nothing in this song too.
Trying to work around that is extremely difficult, because with there are some very obvious things that I think artists can do should leave out of their work. For instance, hate speech, discrimination, there's sexual violence and the like, but there's none of that in here.
No, but apparently...
And it's really hard to work around saying, yeah.
The most innocent stuff can inspire some people to do the most horrific acts.
It's fucking terrifying when you think about it. that anyone's thought process could lead them to make a connection from something completely innocent to causing them to commit horrific acts.
I really don't want to imagine the feeling that the Beatles must have had when they learned that those acts were in parts inspired by what for them was just recording a fun song. Should we move on to Long, Long, Long?
We should.
Do you have anything to say about Long, Long, Long?
It's long. Well, it's not long in length, but
It's not long, it's long, long, long.
it's nondescript.
Yeah. Revolution number 1.
Do you have anything to say about it?
Yeah, this was very weird to me because it's a different version of the B-side of Hey Jude, Revolution.
Yeah.
And it's very different.
It sticks out.
It does. You know what it reminds me of? Of something
What's
that
that?
could be on the Jungle Book soundtrack. Which, the single version doesn't sound anything like this, but
As
this,
in weirdly upbeat, or
it has this ooh shooby doo wah ooh shooby doo, which just reminds me of Baloo the Bear, which is appropriate because all the Indian stuff in this album.
Yep.
Now from something that reminds me of a dancing Indian bear to a dancing Canadian trying to sound Caribbean, Honey Pie, which when I re-listened to this song,
this was an interesting time to bring up Honey Pie.
it reminded me of Hotline Bling by Drake in lyrical.
Now that you say it,
Yeah, and it has the same problem. You know what I mean, right?
I do.
Can you tackle this? You are better at this than I am.
How so? In terms of the atmosphere it's going for, but not quite achieving.
In terms of it's talking about, it's both are songs from the perspective of a man
Yes.
singing about a woman who made a career, but thinking they should rather go for their dick than for the career.
That's true. It's kind of like, oh, you might have all this going for you in your life, but my sexual gratification is more important.
Yeah. I think Honey Pie
Oh!
might be tongue-in-cheek, but I'm not sure.
No. It might be, but as you said, it is a little bit. Some of their views are a little bit backwards in this sense.
Is it really backwards if it's the late 60s?
You know what I mean.
Yeah, I know, but what I'm asking is,
And
would those
also,
views
it
have
tells
been considered?
her, rather than him just begging her to come back and all that, it says to be where you belong.
Yeah, which might be honestly more problematic than...
Possessive.
No, honestly, it's not as problematic. I was saying it's more problematic than anything Drake said on that song, but at least this song doesn't say anything about good girls.
Yeah. But still, it's that same self-centered perspective.
It is.
Were we not even going to talk about Revolution 1?
We did talk about Revolution number 1. I mentioned the Jungle Book thing, and then you gave me... Well, I gave myself... I don't remember who gave me a good segue to talk about Honey Pie, and then I talked about Honey Pie. Do you have any more points about Revolution number 1?
I had more of a point, rather than stylistically, about the actual lyrics.
Yeah?
About this. Is this trying to say that activism is bollocks? Is this trying to say that people aren't doing enough, they're just sitting around? Or is this trying to say that they're not interested in doing anything for a cause or getting in there because, dude, you're ruining my positive vibes? It could be any of those three things.
What I thought about with this song is that they are that they would be part of a cause which is non-violent but not of a violent cause. And what I specifically thought about
okay.
is going with MLK but not going with Malcolm X. Something along those lines, maybe?
A kind of violence is not the answer approach.
I think that is what they're going for. Especially because the civil rights movement was on their mind at the time.
Maybe. I think there's a problem with that, though, when it's just white people saying, yeah, that approach is too violent. That's not really the answer. That's kind of from the perspective of someone who hasn't been put in that situation.
Who is not of that color and on the opposite side of the world. Which,
yes.
I mean, I'm pointing the finger on myself with what I just said right now, you know.
Problem is, it's all well and good for someone to say that, oh yeah, their approach, for instance, with Malcolm X, that approach was too aggressive, that approach was not the most productive way, or things like that. But when you've been pushed down that far, sometimes whether it's true or not, people may see it as the only option. And for someone who's never been put in that situation, whose family has never been through it, who's never even seen it firsthand, I honestly think that's a bit rich.
It is. Speaking of...
It's kind of like trying to look like the good, peaceful person. You know what I mean? Taking the moral high ground about an issue that's not even yours. I don't think that was their intention. I'm pointing out that a lot of people in society do this.
Yeah, I mean, the intention, at least to me, doesn't matter as much as what is actually on the record.
I think I addressed this briefly in the last podcast as well.
You did.
With the whole, yeah, but violence isn't the answer thing.
Yeah, when you were responding to Sarkeesian's Twitter post about the movie.
How realistic is that response? And how much of it is genuine pacifism from a well-intentioned place, but one lacking in perspective? And how much is it of trying to be the good guy, TM?
Or just plain complacency?
That too.
You know that in the X-Men comics, which were also released around this time, I think a bit earlier, I could look it up, but I'm too lazy, that Magneto and the Professor were based on Malcolm X and MLK, and that they kind of have the same message as this song does. Also, as I pointed out to you before, everyone in the original X-Men comics is white.
Remember that? If you looked at their outfits and everything, and the way they were trying to portray them, if you read the Wikipedia articles, the stuff from the original writers, whatever, that they were a metaphor for a civil rights group. Okay, and they're all white cars.
And also, before we move on to Savoy Truffle, one last X-Men point. You know that everyone is white, but of the bad guys of Magneto's crew, he's Jewish, and Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch are Romani. So everyone is kind of white, but some of the bad guys are still racial minorities, but only of the bad guys, of course. What the fuck
on the
was
good
that?
side, everyone's...
Yeah.
I get it. Maybe they were trying to appeal to their white readership, but if they care so much about the problem, why would they be whitewashing to make a buck?
I think we have to do a more positive Marvel episode later, because we shed a lot on Marvel comics in this episode. We should do a more positive Marvel episode later, and we will.
I think I also kind of shat on this album more than necessary, because it is a good one.
So Marvel episode coming soon, and we like this album. We just don't find it perfect. Moving on to Savoy Truffle.
Okay, it was written by George Harrison, right?
Yeah.
When he went to Eric Clapton's place once, and Clapton had this subscription to a magazine about chocolate.
Just bought one. He
Or bought one. I don't know. He had them around. Anyway, George got high and started reading one of these. And it just had loads of shit about different kinds of fancy chocolates in there. And he thought, I know what? I'm gonna write a fucking song about this. There's no deeper meaning, there's no metaphor.
you just get
It's
hungry when
literally
you
about
listen to this.
chocolate.
Also, that sounds like a really bad thing to read if you got the munchies. Which, knowing George Harrison, he probably did. Because we can be sure that none of this album wasn't written under the influence, right?
How else would he have come up with coconut fudge really blows down those blues?
And honestly, this is where I stop liking the album. The other three tracks really don't do anything for me. Do you have any more points about Cry Baby Cry and Goodnight, or do you just want to discuss
Let's leave
Revolution?
Revolution 9 for last.
Okay, good, because
I have opinions.
Alright. Let's talk about Cry Baby Cry and Goodnight. Before that, I have literally nothing to say about this. Same as with
Cry
Blues
Baby
and
Cry. You know
Long
when
Long
something's
Long.
boring catchy?
Can you give me another example?
I'm trying to think of one that I don't hate.
You can just give me one that you hate.
Okay, you know Call Me Maybe, right?
Yes.
I absolutely loathe that song.
You
I
do
don't know why.
what?
I can't stand it. But if you go past a shop or restaurant or whatever playing it, it'll be stuck in your head for the next 3 days.
But that's not
I don't-
boring.
Yeah,
It's
I
annoyingly
don't-
catchy, but it's not
it
boring.
is boring. It's insanely repetitive.
Yes, it is, but it's not boring.
How is it not boring?
Because, you know, it's punchy and exciting and it's just so fucking happy.
It just reminds me of walking into the living room to get something when your 14-year-old sibling has come back from school and is watching Disney Channel on full volume.
Do you have any points about Goodnight?
I actually like this song.
Alright,
It's really cute.
it is, but I just don't have anything to say about this. Other than it's cute
I mean,
and
yeah, it's not particularly catchy or upbeat or anything, but it's a song about going to sleep.
and as
I mean, you've got to give it that. Now, Revolution 9.
can you, to everyone who for some reason hasn't listened to the White Album ever, explain what Revolution number 9 is?
Trying to find a way to explain it.
It's been called a sound collage.
Yeah, so they've basically taken small pieces of sound from their works. I wouldn't call it a compilation as much of a mix.
From what you're describing now, because you know, you are describing remixing 60s stuff, which to me just sounds like Fatboy
You know-
Slim's You've Come a Long Way Baby. But
Wasn't it supposed to kind of go at the end of Revolution?
I'm not sure. The title would suggest that, but the album really doesn't make sense with its chronology.
I think it was supposed to be an extension of Revolution.
Did you ever try listening to Revolution number 1 and then listening to Revolution number 9?
I did, and I'm glad they didn't put it on the end. It just works on its own. Okay, I was right.
Whatever happened to Revolutions 2 through 8?
I actually have no idea. Okay, so what actually happened is when Lennon wrote Revolution, what later became Revolution 9 was supposed to be an extension for the ending of that, but they decided against that, and then I think with Yoko Ono and George Harrison, he sort of added in, as you said, a sound collage of vocals, music, speech, various bits of sound, put that together, and sort of made it a piece of its own. Some of it sounds to me like, have you ever gone on those YouTube videos where it's usually done by some conspiracy theorist or someone who's really high? Someone takes a song, plays it backwards, and tries to decode messages in there.
Yeah, which people did with this, because
It really fucking sounds like, it doesn't need to, it really sounds like one of those.
you know that this one
I
is
think-
one of the most often discussed Paul is Dead songs, right? And that apparently if you play number 9, number 9, number 9 backwards, it sounds like Turn Me On, Dead Man.
Apparently some of the I just found out some of the sound in there is actually reversed audio, which explains everything. It's just trippy as fuck as its own recording.
Do you actually get anything out of it?
I do.
Can you explain what you get out of it?
It's just like tripping balls. Except it's kind of something I wouldn't recommend listening to if you're on something, because at times it's a little disturbing.
What you are saying is you would recommend skipping it if you're listening to this album while high, while I would recommend skipping it.
But it's funny how it's the most psychedelic song of the album, but the one I least recommend to if you are indeed high as fuck.
I'd say it's a track, not it's a song.
Is this one of the ones you want to take off?
It is.
I have mixed views. As I said, I like Revolution 9, but does it really belong on the White Album?
Where else would it belong? On this weird thing that John did with Yoko Ono,
Or at
where
least-
they were naked on the cover?
Maybe, but I kind of like the fact that they put the last song right after Revolution 9.
Yeah, which is really a
You
contrast.
kind of- No, but you kind of need it after that.
Yeah, as a palate cleanser. Do you have any
I
clothing?
had a weird thought about it though.
Yeah, which is?
You know how it was released on LPs, it was released on vinyls. Think about the very beginning. Where it's just repeated. Oh,
if you
someone-
don't know, it just
If you
sounds
don't
like
know
the
the
record
album-
is skipping.
Yes. It just sounds like your record is fucked.
How many people you think just ran to their record player to check if it was okay?
Did I freak you, by the way?
Did you ever had that happen?
What happened?
Have you ever experienced the dust speck on the LP? In any
Yes, and it
context?
sounds exactly like that.
I'm gonna mention it again. That reminds me of Fatboy Slim.
But as you said, how many people would have not realised it was part of the recording?
A lot. And once again, it shows that this album was released in a very, very different time from today.
That's all from us for now, and we'll be back again next week. This time we'll be talking about a book for the first time.
Which would be Michael Ende's The Never-Ending Story. The first half of which was turned into a movie, but we will be talking about the actual book, not the movie. We might touch on the movie, but mostly we will be talking about the book. So if you haven't read that and want to get everything we are talking about without being spoiled, just pick that up. Otherwise, we'll see you next week anyway, because why wouldn't you want to listen to us? And if you haven't already, you should really check out this album because it's great. It's not perfect, but it's great. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.